Hello and welcome back, friends. This is Dawn with another video for Pinkfresh Studio. So we've got a lot to do today. We're going to be creating 4 cards, and all of these cards are going to feature my new product with Pinkfresh Studio, the Deck the Halls product suite. Now I'm going to be mixing in a lot of product from their current release as well as some of your old favorites, but let's start by taking a look at this product suite. Now the hero of this collection is the wide washi tape here. This is a repeating pattern of 10 individual hand watercolored motifs, and they are absolutely stunning. I could not be happier with how well these turned out. They just absolutely are stunning. So each individual graphic or motif features these beautiful hot foil details here. You can see that high shine detail. That is part of the washi tape, and it is something that they include on all of their washis. And like I mentioned, all of these images started from my watercolors that were done by hand on actual paper, and then we digitized them and turned them into washis. So they're absolutely authentic, and you'll find all of those characteristics that you love about watercolor in these images. Now from that washi and those designs, there's also a stamp set that was created that if you prefer to do your own coloring, you can absolutely do that. And if you're not a colorist, there is a stencil available to help you color these in quickly. And you can see here on the back all of the little different motifs that are included. And then of course you have your die, which can be used with both the stamp or the washi. And like I mentioned, I'm going to be focusing on the washi tape today, so all of our cards are going to feature that. In fact, we're going to be using every motif included in the design at least once, so I'll have an example for you of how to use every single piece in this design. Now, to use the washi, you're going to want to adhere it to a piece of cardstock. I've taken an 8.5 by 11 piece of cardstock, and I've cut it down the center at 4¼ inches. So that's going to give me a 4¼ by 11 inch long sheet of cardstock here. Then I just roll the washi tape out onto the cardstock using my free hand to kind of push it down into place and ensure that there are no air bubbles. When I get to the end of the pattern here, I'll use a long pair of scissors to trim that off, and then I'm going to follow up with my bone folder. I like to kind of burnish the washi tape onto the cardstock here, just again to make sure that there are no wrinkles or air bubbles in the washi. All right, and then I'm going to use the coordinating die to cut these images out. Now I like to go ahead and tape these dies into place on my cutting mat, on my cutting plate here. So washi tape doesn't stick to washi tape very well. Otherwise, we wouldn't be able to unroll the washi tape. So what I like to make sure, I make sure that when I tape these down, my washi tape is touching either the exposed cardstock. In this case, the exposed cardstock is at the top, and that it's also taped to my cutting plate. So this is going to hold those dies in place nice and securely so that it doesn't shift or move when I run it through my die cut machine. Now you'll notice here that the dies, these are 2 separate dies. So you've got 3 of the images grouped on one die and all of the rest of the images grouped on another die. This is a nice change that Pinkfresh has made to these washi tape suites. These used to be all one die, which would make it difficult for the entire die or impossible to fit on a standard cutting plate if you didn't have the extended cutting plate. So they've made this change to both the stamp set and the die. That way the stamp set fits into a standard stamping tool, and also the dies fit onto a standard cutting plate. I'm really happy with this change because I did not like using the door of my MISC to do my stamping, but I made do because the designs are so beautiful. Okay, so I went ahead and did this a second time, and that gave me 2 groups, and now I have all of this fun ephemera to play with. And we're going to feature that beautiful wreath on this Gatefold card. Now this one is a little bit different. The wreath is a butterfly slider closure, so it's one of those things that's definitely easier to show than tell. So let's go ahead and jump right in. And we're going to start with creating the doors for our gatefold. Now I'm going to use the twist pattern press plate and dies to create those doors. So the top layer is going to have that same gold foil detail that is in the washi designs themselves. So I've gone ahead and pulled out my glimmer machine, and now I'm setting up my press plate to do my hot foiling. The shiny side always faces the plate. I'll tape that in place, put that onto my glimmer machine, push the timer, and when that light stops flashing, it's ready to go ahead and run through my die cutting machine. So I'll disengage it from the platform and then run it through. Now I'm going to be doing a lot of hot foiling for these cards, but I'm only going to show the entire process this once. For subsequent cards, we're going to skip this part. I did want to leave in the entire process for the first one though, just in case you're unfamiliar with hot foil and how it works. So here we go. Once we've pulled this out, we're going to go ahead and remove our press plate. Now, do be careful. The plate is hot. It is a hot foil system, and you don't want to burn yourself. So that's why you can see me kind of here. I'm being very careful. They do have a magnetic tool that will grab the plate and pull it off. I'm just bad and I never grab it. But here you can see now we have this gorgeous high shine foil design. This is permanent. It won't scratch off. It won't rub off. It's absolutely divine. I love it. I love hot foil. All right, so now we're going to take the coordinating die and we're going to die cut this. And when I die cut this, it reminded me of a trellis or an intricate wrought iron gate, and that's really what gave me the idea for a gatefold card. So this piece is going to be our top layer, but we need to build our gate doors. So we're going to go ahead and put this one to the side for now, and we need to score these because they are going, like I said, going to be our gate. So I grabbed a trimmer here. Now you can do this with a scoreboard, or if you have a trimmer that has a scoring blade in it, you can use that. But you're just going to score this right directly down the center. And then you're going to fold it in half right at the score line. And this is going to create that gate door. Now I did the exact same steps to the other piece, and now we have both of our gate doors. So we're going to adhere the hot foiled piece on top of our doors here. We've got one piece, so we're going to adhere it to one side. We're going to trim off the excess and then glue the other side to the other one. So I like to use liquid adhesive. It just gives you a little extra wiggle room. So we're going to put that on one half of our back here. We're going to line that up, and you want to make sure that this is perfectly lined up. That's where that liquid adhesive comes into play. And then we're going to trim off the excess. So we're just going to cut it right down the middle. And you'll notice that I adhered this where the cut end was on the outside. So this is so that we match our profiles here. So we've got that little bit of straight edge on the outside and that nice curved one on the inside. And we'll repeat the same steps here with this one on the other door. So now that both of our doors are complete, we have our interior panel here. We're going to glue this right inside. So this is a 4 1/4 by 5.5 inch panel, and I'm not going to trim this down. This is going to keep those doors with just a little gap in between, and this is what's going to allow our butterfly closure there to slide freely. You could trim this down about a 1/16 of an inch if you wanted it to be a little bit tighter, but you do want to leave that little bit of gap. But before we adhere this, we're going to go ahead and stamp our inside sentiment. We're going to be using the Magical Holiday products for that. I'm going to use the stamp set. Now this does have the stamp set, the press plate, the die, and the stencils available. And we're going to be using the press plates for our exterior sentiment. But for the interior sentiment, we're going to go ahead and do our stamping. Now I need to do some dry fitting here because I need to make sure that this interior sentiment is hidden behind our wreath closure. Because the doors of our gatefold aren't solid, they have some see-through portions here like a peekaboo. I want to make sure that when the closure is on, the interior sentiment is going to be completely hidden behind it. So I've die cut a circle here that I'm going to adhere that wreath to, and then our wreath is going to sit right about here. So now I can take my sentiment and place it directly in the center of that so that I know when the card is closed, that sentiment will be hidden behind there and leave room for me to sign it. So now all I have to do is just close the door on my MISC and pick up my stamp. Then I can move all of my pieces out of the way and stamp onto my card base there, which I apparently forgot to film, but you'll see it here a little bit later in the video. Sorry about that. All right, so now I'm going to work on the exterior sentiment. And for that, again, we're using that Magical Holiday press plate. I've got the foil machine out, so I'm going to go ahead and foil several of these sentiments from this set. And that way I have them available for future cards. Remember, we die cut a bunch of those washi tape pieces, so I know I'm going to have plenty to work with. I want to make sure that while I've got the hot foil machine out, I go ahead and create some extra sentiments. Now I did have a little bit of overfoiling, but that's easy to take care of with my mono sand eraser. I can just use that to gently sand away any unwanted foil, and it's like it was never there. It's perfect, works every time. So here we go. You can see that that is now completely gone. All right, then I'm going to use the coordinating die to die cut these sentiments. And with that, I have the majority of all the pieces I need to start assembling this first card. Now, I did adhere my gate to my card base. And again, that's in that footage where I actually did the stamping. I don't know what happened to that footage. I think I might have accidentally I think I was hitting record, but I actually hit stop, and I do apologize. But what I did was I just adhered that back panel to the back of the gate doors. So they are folded around the back of that panel, and you'll be able to see it later in the video. I'll flip the card over and you can see where it's adhered. Now I'm going to adhere my wreath here to that circle, and that circle is just going to give us a solid surface there again to adhere our butterfly mechanism to and to hide our interior sentiment. So again, we're doing that dry fitting. I want to make sure that our circle, our little wreath there, is large enough also to hold the butterfly closure. So what I've done is I've taken a piece of cardstock. It is 8 inches long by 2 inches tall. And I just want to make sure that the wreath is large enough so that it will cover that closure as well. And you can see here that it is. And if you're good at the maths, unlike me who is bad at the maths, you could adjust this to make your little butterfly mechanism smaller or larger. I, however, figured out a 2 by 2 square, and that's what I'm sticking with. So I'm going to score this at 2 inches. I'm going to score it at 3 inches, again at 4 inches. Then we're going to skip 2 inches and go at 6, and then we're going to score again at 7. So again, for a 2-inch square, you're going to do 8 by 2, and you're going to score at 2, 3, 4, 6, and 7. All right, now comes the fun folding part. All right, so starting from the same direction that you scored it, you're going to fold it forward. Then at the next score line, you're going to fold it back. And then at the next score line, you're going to fold it back again. Then you're going to fold it forward, and then you're going to fold it back. So what you're creating is this little butterfly-like spring right here. So again, if we take a look at that, you're going to go forward, back, back, forward, and then back. All right, and now we're going to add glue to hold this together. So we're going to use liquid adhesive, and you're going to apply glue to all 4 of the 1-inch squares. So lay it down flat, and then on both of the faces facing you, just add liquid adhesive. I highly recommend using liquid adhesive here because it will give you a little bit of wiggle room and play time, because you're going to want to now, once you get that adhesive on, just refold it on the lines that you created. So you're just going to fold it right back into that shape, and you've got the glue in all the necessary spots. And then you're going to put it under something heavy to dry. So here we go. I'm just going to fold it up. I'm going to push it down into place, and then I'm going to leave this under something heavy to dry for a minute or two, and then we will have our little closure made. Now, if I can do this, I promise all of you can do this. I'm not good at the math. I don't do the mechanical engineering. I usually don't do interactive cards. I'm all about the visual. But this isn't even my original idea. I saw a Facebook ad fly by with a card kit, and they had this butterfly closure on this gatefold card. And so I only visually saw it working. I didn't have any instructions on how to do it. But I figured I can run in and reverse engineer something similar, and this is what I came up with. I don't know if it's the right way to do it, but it is a way that works. So while that dries, I'm going to go ahead and put together the rest of the card. You can see here the back of our panel where I wrapped those gate folds around the back of that interior panel. We're just going to cover that up and give us a nice clean finished back. So I'm using some liquid adhesive to glue this down to a panel that I've cut slightly larger. Now that means that this is going to be bigger than a 4 1/4 by 5.5 inch standard A2 card, but that's okay. I can always just put this in a little bit larger envelope, maybe an A4 envelope, I think it is, or even a 5 by 7 envelope. This is a pretty bulky card anyway, so it's probably one that I would hand deliver or put in a larger envelope to allow for that extra bulk. Now the main part of our card is assembled, and it's time to take a look at that butterfly closure. So you can see here that these are glued, the edges are glued together, and it leaves these 2 little gaps, gaps to slide down between our doors. So I'm just going to work each side of the door into each one of those gaps, and you just slide this right down the middle. And because we left that little gap in between, we can slide that right in between there, and there's enough tension for it to hold it closed and it doesn't fall off the other end of the card. Now you can just decorate this any way you want to. For this case, we're going to take some liquid adhesive and adhere our wreath right to the center. And I'm going to go ahead and do this while the closure is in place, and this will make sure that my wreath is in the exact right orientation and perfectly centered on the card. I think it's easier to adhere with the closure in place. And now from here, you can just continue to decorate however you want. We have all of these great little pieces here that we can continue to bulk up the wreath if we want to. So I could, add some dimensional foam behind some of these pieces and make the wreath very three-dimensional if I want. I can add extra pieces and kind of change the shape. I can even add some of the ornaments in here and complete the wreath and have the little ornaments hanging down. There's a lot of different options. I did ultimately decide to keep this one pretty simple since the gatefold itself was pretty unique. I added my sentiment, and then I did take a couple extra of those little greenery pieces and pop them up on foam tape, as well as adding some gems and stuff. So we will review this finished card at the end, but for now, let's go ahead and jump into the next card. Now for this one, we're going to be combining some of the new release with some of our older goodies. So we're going to use the holiday greetings sentiment along with the stippled plaid background. This one is one of my favorites. I've used it a lot, but this is the first time that I've hot foiled it and I'm absolutely in love. So after I finished the first card, I had all of these leftover die cut pieces from our washi tape, and I also had a lot of sentiments that I foiled while I had the glimmer machine out. So these ones were created using the holiday greetings sentiments. So this is another one of those suites where you have the stamp set, the press plate, and the die. I used the press plate and I did in a couple different colors. I do end up using all of the gold because again, that gold foil pulls from the washi tape and it's really the consistent theme through all these cards. All right, so to create our frame, I'm going to use the notched corner frame dies. Now this die set allows you to cut either labels or frames with or without a detailed edge. So I've taken the middle sized frame here. So I've got the outer edge, the inner edge, and then the detail in between. These have already been taped together because I've used them before to cut just one frame, but I want to cut multiple frames to stack one on top of the other to give them a little bit of thickness and height. And to do that, I need every frame to be cut identically. And a lot of the times when I use just washi tape, the washi tape will cut through or tear after one cut. So what I'm going to do is use a little bit of press and seal. And this is a trick that I've used many times before when I want to cut multiples of an identical shape. Whenever the dies are nested like this, they can shift or move, and if they're off even so slightly, you can't get them to stack identically on top of each other. So by using this press and seal, it's going to keep all of these dies together in the exact same spot, and I can cut as many of these as I want to. And I know they're all going to be identical. Now with this particular setup, I have a very large open area there in the center with exposed press and seal. So what I'm going to do is cut this from some printer paper first. The printer paper is going to stick to that exposed press and seal there in the center, and it's going to keep it from adhering to my cardstock when I eventually go to cut that. Because the pressure of the die cutting machine will cause that press and seal to stick really, really well to that cardstock, and when you try to remove it, it will rip it. So we're going to leave that center area in place, and it's going to protect our cardstock when we go to die cut. This is going to allow me to use that label on my next card, so all of the pieces will still be usable. So here you can see when we run this through our die cut machine, I'm going to be left with, we're going to have a small label, and then we're going to have a frame. So here we go, there's that label. And then now we're going to have this beautiful frame. I'm going to go ahead and cut 2 more of these, and they're going to be identical. So I'll be able to stack them after. So here we go. We're going to lay down another one. I'm just going to put that right back in place. And I know that these dies have not shifted or moved at all because they're being held in place by that press and seal. So again, we have another label, which again, I will use on a subsequent card. And then we've got another frame here. So these are exactly identical, and you can see when I flip it over, there we go, they're identical. So they're gonna stack up nicely. Now, once I was done cutting my frames, I went ahead and took my dies apart, and I used just that outer label to cut another solid label, and this was gonna give me a backer for my frame here. Because I already knew that I was gonna do some hot foiled pattern in the background, I just wasn't sure exactly what yet. So in the meantime, I went ahead and grabbed all of our little washi pieces and I started creating a little arrangement here using the ornaments in the washi tape. I absolutely love these. I think that they're so elegant, almost the vintage vibe to them, but kind of like is there such thing as a modern vintage? Because that's the vibe, that's the feels it's giving me, and I absolutely love it. I mean, kind of in that same vein, it was almost, wanted to create not a literal window, but maybe like a window you maybe look through at a department store, and maybe it's a display window with decorations of greenery and ornaments. So I just kind of worked my way through the design. And you can see here we are using that visual triangle with the two sets of ornaments and then the sentiment. So it does have that nice balance. The larger set of ornaments is in the upper left-hand corner, and then it leads your eye to the smaller set of ornaments and then back over to the sentiment. So not only do we have that visual triangle, we have a nice flow both diagonally and from top to bottom on the card. So visually it works really well and there's a good flow. In the bare spots, I just filled in with some extra greenery. And once I had everything where I knew I wanted it, I went ahead and started adhering things. And I'm using a mix of liquid adhesive and then also 2 different levels of foam adhesive. I wanted a lot of depth and dimension here. So some of the things are flat to the background, some of them are popped up just a little, and some of them are popped up pretty high. Now the frame around the outside will be popped up the highest. This is actually, you could turn this into a shaker if you wanted. The design is perfect, very conducive to creating a shaker because we do have that solid frame around the outside. You could put some acetate behind here and then fill it with some gems and create a little shaker. That would be super cute as well. But I will leave the shakers to you because Dawn does not get down with the shaker cards. All right. With our focal point here done, I can go ahead and start working on that background. And like I mentioned, for that I used the stippled plaid press plate, and this time I hot foiled it with the gold foil. Again, absolutely love how this looks hot foiled, you guys. If you haven't used your press plates with hot foil, I highly recommend it. It is a game changer. Look at this. Oh my goodness. All right, so we're going to use this for the background of this card. That's pretty much all we have left to do. So I'm going to go ahead. We'll review this card at the end. For now, we're going to jump into the third card. And this one is super versatile and quick. You could whip up a whole bunch of holiday cards and just swap out that main sentiment as well as the greenery there to create all of your Christmas cards with a little bit of uniqueness to them so that you don't get bored with the design. So for example, here I have those leftover labels from where we cut out those frames, and I'm using a couple of the holiday greetings sentiments here. And then you can just flank them with some of these washi die cut pieces here. And you can get as creative and as elaborate as you want or as simple as you want. The design is very elegant and it already has a lot of interest because you have that hot foil. So overall, these are probably the most simple but have a huge wow factor. Here you can see I'm playing around with a couple of different, little different arrangements. And then I finally did settle on using just one of them, but I wanted to include some of this in the video just to give you guys some ideas so you could see how you can kind of change it up. Now, ultimately, I did not decide on this one, but I do still really love this one. I love the way that the greenery matches the flow of that holiday season sentiment so well. But I was at this point thought this was what I was going to go with, and I originally thought I was going to use that same background with this card. And again, I changed my mind. Surprise, surprise. However, again, look at this. Absolutely beautiful. This would work as well. However, Pinkfresh just released the Poinsettia Frame product suite. Now this has a press plate, a stencil, and a stamp set and a die. And you guys, I've played with the stencil in this one. It's not in this video, but absolutely gorgeous. I'm going to do another video with just this poinsettia frame and the stencil because, spoiler alert, you can use it with just the stencil and it is absolutely beautiful. But for these cards, we already have that central theme of the gold foil. So we're going to go ahead and keep running with that. And these delicate lines, when you hot foil them, they are absolutely stunning. They add just the right amount of interest to that background because the rest of the card is very simple, but the gold foil elevates the design. So here, this label, it's just, the card is simple. So I like to find ways to add interest without in-your-face interest, and texture, actual physical texture is a great way to do this. So in that notched corner frame die, there is an optional die in here for each of the labels that allows you to add a decorative edge. So this just cuts a little decorative edge into the die. And so we're going to go ahead and put that in place. I'm going to run that through the die cut machine. And what that's going to do is just impress this gorgeous little edge detail around that label. And this is the perfect touch. It adds a little bit more texture to the card, elevates the design without distracting from the rest of the card. And like I mentioned before, you could make multiples of this basic background and then just swap out the sentiment. Ultimately, I did change out the sentiment on this one. I just liked the way the more rectangular one, it was just a little bit taller, so it covered more of our label here. It just fit that space a tiny bit nicer. Still, the other one would have worked, but if I only had to choose one, this is the one I went with. So I glued all of my little pieces together here, and then we're going to adhere it as one using some foam adhesive. So I just went ahead and put a bunch of adhesive across the back of that. And then I'm going to use a little bit of liquid adhesive as well. This will give me, again, a little bit of wiggle room to make sure that I get my sentiment centered and straight. When you're doing a clean and simple design, color, balance, spacing, all of that is very important because you don't have a bunch of other elements to distract away from if something is just slightly off. So you'll want to give that little bit of liquid adhesive will help you, give you a little bit of time to make sure you get this perfectly centered. So there we go. All we have to do now is just adhere this to our background and this card is pretty much done. So let's go ahead and jump into our final card and we will review this at the end. So by the time I got to this last card, I realized that I had used almost every motif included in the washi tape design, and I figured why not use them all? So I arranged all of the greenery pieces in a triangle to emulate the look of a Christmas tree. This is super simple to do. I have some larger gaps in between each of them. That's okay because we will fill these in, don't you worry. The fact that these are already foliage and greenery just further and reinforces the look of a tree. So just get it in that triangle shape. I'm going to adhere these with a little bit of foam adhesive for dimension because again, we're going to keep this very simple, very elegant. And if you've watched a few of my videos, some of you are wondering right now, how come I'm not using the press and seal trick to adhere these? Well, that is because press and seal does not stick to washi tape either. Washi tape won't stick to washi tape and neither will press and seal. So we're down to the good old pick them up one by one and adhere them, but that's okay. It goes really quickly. Now at the bottom, I've left a little room for the sentiment and serendipitously, this magical holiday kind of emulates the trunk or the base of the tree perfectly. And because we popped up all of our foliage there on foam dots, the part of the sentiment that hangs off of the tree, we're going to use some foam adhesive there. And then the area that overlaps, we're going to use a little liquid adhesive. This is going to ensure that the sentiment is secure, level, and it clears those popped up pieces. So we'll just pop that right into place. Again, we're using that liquid adhesive over our foam adhesive. So we have that wiggle room to make sure we get it perfectly centered and straight. And finally, to reinforce the idea of a Christmas tree here, I'm adding some gold pearls to the open areas between each of the little greenery pieces. And because we popped up those pieces, this provides like a little channel for each of these pearls to sit into. So that way, when you pull the card in and out of the envelope, there's no way for those pearls to get caught or knocked out of place. They're almost completely flush with the rest of the card. Okay, so that pretty much finishes up this card as well. Let's go ahead and take a look at all of the final cards. So here we have that look at the large wreath included in that Deck the Halls washi tape. Here we've made a gatefold card with a little butterfly closure for it. I absolutely adore how this twisted pattern really looks like a gate. So it just really lent itself well to having the wreath on it. To close this up, you just grab those two wings, fold them back, and then slide the doors in between the gaps, and then just slide that closure down. Again, we left that little bit of gap in between to allow room for that to freely slide through, but the gap is not so large that the little closure there falls off. There's just enough tension there that when we do stand this up, it doesn't fall. And I think that this one turned out, I love this one. I absolutely adore it. So for our second card here, we went ahead and used all of the ornaments included in the washi tape. What I love about this one is it actually looks much more complicated than it is. Because we didn't have to do any of the coloring, those washi tape die cuts were already colored for us. All we had to do was arrange them, and that is definitely a time saver. So for the third card, it is probably the most simplest, but also the most versatile. If the white and gold is not your vibe, you could always use the stamp set and add the stencils to add color to the background, or you could do an actual letterpress impression in the background, and that would be beautiful as well. And then finally, we have our Christmas tree card here, where I was able to use up all of the remaining motifs available in the design. I'm super excited that I was able to share with you guys a use for every single element included in the washi design. And I wanted to say a great big thank you to Pinkfresh for allowing me to bring you guys some of my watercolor through their products. I am extremely happy with how everything turned out and how versatile and easy they are to use. Hopefully today's video gives you some great ideas on how to incorporate these washi designs into your card making. If so, make sure you give this a thumbs up. And if you're not already, make sure that you're subscribed so you don't miss any future videos. All of the featured products will be listed in the description box below, and I would love to know which one of today's cards is your favorite. Make sure to leave it in the comments. As always, I want to thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye.